So
So,
because this idea of the theme for this was your idea, so I would say you should present the idea and then talk about it first, and I'll go, and then we'll have Bruce talk about it.
yeah, so the idea was really based on, and most of the time I'm getting a lot of questions over on this side, especially from factories,
Mhm.
is rider aids. They're trying to put every single rider aid on the bikes, from blind spot awareness to if it tore I guess anti-slip, rain modes, ABS systems that are aware of the surroundings, so you can actually brake dive for suspension. Let me go to my list here. I've got cruise control, crash detection, blind spot warning where the bars vibrate between if there's someone in your blind spot on the left or the right. Really, they look at new riders or trying to draw in people to say, oh well, maybe it's not as dangerous, and I get that. But if you're riding 1,000cc bike, you really shouldn't be needing a lot of these things. And most of the time, these countries now, they're requiring, especially in Europe, that you can't disconnect it.
Mhm.
Hello. So I've got one wheelie control. It won't bring the front end up, won't bout. It keeps the front, traction going without raising the front. And this is mostly for electrics now.
Mhm.
A lot of it, I'm like, it's bringing the motorcycle, just the overall performance and the way we expect the motorcycle to ride out of the picture. I mean, I'm one that's all about an analog bike. I love analog bikes. I do enjoy a good fuel injection system and ease of use, but I think it's getting, the nannies are controlling how we're going to go out and ride the bikes now.
Mhm.
I mean, I've got one company that asked me about control through your GPS system, whether you can make the bike. Is everybody there?
Yeah.
You can make the bike travel only at the speed limit of the recorded GPS.
That's crazy.
So basically, going out for a fun weekend in the canyons, you'd be like, stuck. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're gonna stick that in a bike, and it's like, I don't ride a bike because I must do that.
Yeah,
I
dude,
do.
I don't ride a bike to go the fucking speed limit. That's for goddamn sure.
I enjoy riding, and I don't mind doing the speed limit, but I want to be able to get the throttle down if I feel like it, or pass it on, especially getting out of the way of traffic. A lot of times it takes a pass. Oh, I'm stuck to the traffic. And then you got to go through the prompts to disconnect, turn the system off so you can actually travel. Well, it just adds more things to do instead of paying attention to the road.
You imagine if that system, you're passing someone and that system sees that you're starting to go over the speed limit, it just turns down your power.
Yeah. Yeah, because you forgot to turn it off. Can you imagine that? You forgot to turn it off, you take off, and you're like, bleh. It doesn't make any sense. So a lot of this is really based on how much are we going to let this nanny controls control our riding? I mean, how can we get into these companies that, the KTMs even, where every single time you turn on the system, your ABS turns on the off-roads or on the adventure bikes. Yep. Even though you're out on the dirt, you're going to sit there and, like, when you want to look the rear end up, hey, the ABS is back on because you turned off your bike, turned it back on, forgot to turn the thing off, and you want that
able to lock up the rear wheel or forcing you to, it just forcing a way of riding. And I just can't get with it on the analog without going to the ability to shut it off.
Mhm.
You know, and I get that they want to do it sometimes for the really big bikes, the high horsepowers, traction control, all that stuff. My Ducati has traction control. It is handy, especially when you're like pounding in the corners. But, you know, you don't need it to, and it's got levels of like, I think 6 different levels of traction control. I can make it to where it barely even breaks loose at all. But if you're buying a 130 horsepower bike, shouldn't you be able to actually ride that way? You know, you're getting a bike that the horsepower to weight ratio allows that. You know,
So
I half the time just want to turn the thing off.
here's my question. So I've been riding for almost 30 years now. And so this is my question. So you put these stability controls, you put these leveling sensors, you put these traction controls, you put all this on this motorcycle, and then you get some guy in his 20s or even early 30s, he's going to go out, he's going to buy a motorcycle he's never ridden before, he rides this bike with all these aids on it. Like,
Yep.
you're putting his life in danger.
Yeah.
Because he does not know how to handle that bike. He does not know what to do when he hits the sand at 90 miles an hour. He doesn't know, like, let's say his sensor fails and he's going into a corner at 75 miles an hour and it's a 40-mile-an-hour corner. Like, what does he do when his rear end starts to come around? He's never ridden. You know, like, I grew up with being taught that, you know, a good rider, a good road rider learned to ride in the dirt.
Yeah.
You know? And
You know, that's the problem with a lot of it is, and I actually do respect the, you know, some of the European deals where they say, okay, if you're a new rider, you could ride up to a 300 or 400 cc bike. You're not going to go out and get on 100 horsepower or whatever it is. You're going to be 2 to 3 years on a smaller motor, learn to ride, you know, that way you're not scaring the crap out of yourself, you know, or getting yourself in deeper shit you need to be. I get that. I think as a law, that's not a horrible one to be, especially if you're learning.
right.
But, you know, an experienced rider should be able to turn these things off.
But where do you draw the line? How do you
That's
know
the
who's an
thing.
experienced rider and who's not?
I think
Exactly.
the best thing
I mean-
they can do is offer analog bikes and, you know, the other type of bikes. That's like, instead of
Yeah.
instead of not giving a person a choice, you know, that's when
Well, that's the
someone-
thing is,
Yeah.
do you have a choice of getting ABS now?
Well,
No,
No.
yeah,
it comes standard
Everything
even on
must
Harley.
have,
yeah, that's
Even
great.
the Harley have them. And they also
everything
have
must have ABS.
and they also have the fucking stability control on them too. Even the Harleys, all the
Yeah.
new ones have that stability control in them.
Yeah.
So I mean,
There's,
you look at
they're
so
testing.
I got a 2000 Softail custom with a 131 modified motor. So I'm like just about 2000 cc's. And this fucker stands up in 4th and 5th gear, right straight up and down. There's nothing to it. It's a 500-pound bike with a motor that's built for a dresser for a 1,000-pound motorcycle. So
Yeah.
you put that shit on my motorcycle and it's like, then you let somebody ride it, shut that off, that person's going to kill themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and
And-
now they're doing with a lean control, right? To allow the motorcycle not to get into too heavy of a lean, or if they're not leaning enough to help them. That's not learning to ride.
Yeah. I wonder how that would even work. That's interesting.
Yeah, you got to talk to BMW on that one. Of course, they're always in the you know, the heads of something.
I've
Something
seen the
ridiculous.
videos on the untippable motorcycles, but I haven't seen them on the road yet. So
You know, they're working on
there's
all
like
that
a-
stuff.
Maybe
because-
there's a needle in the seat that starts poking you in the butt cheek, so you shift your weight. I don't know. What are they?
no, it's got like a gyroscope and shifts its internal weight. I don't know.
Well, see, but
Yeah.
a motorcycle is a natural gyroscope already.
Hmm.
When
Yep.
in motion, see, and if people that start riding and they learn to ride and they learn to become one with a bike, you understand that as long as that bike is in forward motion, it's hard to tip it over.
Yeah.
Because it wants to stay up straight,
Hmm.
you know. But you start putting these
Yeah.
other things in there, then where does a person learn to counterbalance or counter it when it's going down too far?
See, so all these things they're putting, all these safety things are going to make it more dangerous for the new riders, because the new riders are not going to have the ability to learn to ride on a simple bike and learn to control a simple bike. So, I mean, we, you know, everybody here, we had the option to use them as a stepping stone. I had a moped when I was 9. I had a, you know, then from there it just kept going up and up and up, and, you know, different types of bikes. So you kind of teach yourself, you know, on the dirt bikes also, you know, you learn what happens, like how do you react when the rear end comes out, you know, things like that. But if they do this to, well, they are already doing this, but that's nuts. You know,
Yeah.
they're making it more dangerous for the new riders, basically. I mean,
Like I told
if they don't give them an option, like here's this type of bike, here's this type of bike, which they're not doing, all these safety things are making it more dangerous for sure.
like I told you, man, my
Yeah.
first bike, I was 4 years old. It was a Honda 50 CR, and it had one training wheel on it, you know, that my dad put on it, and we took it off by the time I was 5. You know, so it ran a normal clutch, just like anything else.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, I could ride a motorcycle before I could ride a pedal bike. So
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
the essentials of riding are part of becoming I don't know, you know, it's like you ride your own bike every day, right? You can ride that thing with your eyes closed. You're just become one with it, like, you know it.
Yeah.
And then you get on somebody else's bike and it's top heavy, or the center of gravity is too low. It just, the bars are different. It doesn't feel right.
Learning curve.
And-
Yeah.
Oh, go.
Yeah, and you have to ride it a little bit so you can feel it.
Right.
Where if you make an automated bike for me, where am I going to learn that? Because it's just like getting in a car at that point.
I think there ought to be like an
Basically,
on-off switch. You know,
there needs to be an on-off switch.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a way. I mean, even one of the lowest tech bikes out there, I mean, besides the KLRs and DRs, I mean, the new Tenere 700 that you have, because if it's on road, we already know that if it's made for the road, it's going to have every nanny feature you can have. That's just it nowadays. I mean, unless you're buying a scooter, and even the scooter is required to have ABS.
Well, my Kawasaki's a 2018, 1700, and you know, she's a bagger. She's totally dressed out, but the only thing she has is ABS. That's it. I don't even turn the radio on.
Yeah.
What do you have? You have a Boulevard, or what one?
No,
Oh
it's a
no, that's
Vulcan.
Suzuki. Yep.
Yeah.
Never mind.
No, I have a Vulcan.
Yeah, they're nice.
Yeah, but it's real basic as far as all technology goes. It has a radio, but that's it.
Yeah, the and kind of on top of the basics. They still have some basic things, but you know, when you get into the European bikes, you're kind of seeing everything.
Yeah.
You know, and you're starting to see the same thing in the US, you know, and electric motorcycles are even going farther beyond that for
I would imagine
nanny feature.
so. Now, the only nanny feature that I've ever experienced that really annoyed me was, I guess the first bike that I purchased myself was a Suzuki Intruder 1400. And it's got a 1400 cc engine, but it's like stuffed in like a kind of a lightweight frame. So it's got a lot of power to weight. Anyway, it capped at 95 miles an hour. Wouldn't let me go any faster than that. That kind of that annoyed me.
Mhm.
So, have any of you guys had experience with the new like stability and cornering control that comes in a lot of these newer bikes?
I've seen the videos
Yeah.
on them. I haven't.
Have you ridden one?
Yeah.
So a brother of mine has one, and it's a 2021 Road Glide Special, and I rode it, and I don't know, I didn't like it at all. When a motorcycle starts to fight me, I don't, that makes it dangerous. I didn't feel safe necessarily.
See,
Mhm.
I learned really riding and cornering. I did a lot of flat track riding where you're drifting through and you're cornering a certain way. And I've gotten on like some of the newer ride stability modes, and they completely go against what my growing up, learning to rides
The
way.
push-pull method, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was fighting the bike constantly. And I just like, I don't really want to be on the bike.
Right. And that
Yeah.
was my viewpoint exactly. I was thinking about buying one of
Yeah.
these till I rode hits, and I'm like, this is stupid.
Gary,
Yeah.
can you tell me more about what is it? How does it act? What does it do? I never experienced that thing.
Well, it cuts basically a lot of times it'll cut throttle. It won't allow for when you get deep in, a lot of times it kind of cuts you down where you're trying to attack into a corner if you're riding this way. Now, if you're just lazy riding, it's fine. It feels great.
Mhm.
You don't notice it. But as soon as you try to get into any sort of attack mode and ride it as a sport bike or whatever it is, it starts cutting your throttle out. You're losing throttle in the middle of the corner, where to me, at that apex of the corner, you're getting on the throttle and then it's cutting my throttle.
Well, and some of these newer dressers, these fancier dressers, they got, it's like an electronic air ride.
Yeah.
And it literally like will change the weight shift of the bike.
Yeah.
Like on this Road Glide, it was releasing air on one side and putting air in another. And I was like, you know what I mean? Like totally threw me.
Yeah. When you start there and start playing with the ride dynamics, and you're used to riding a full analog bike and you're coming in and out of corners, and you've got something that's changing your weight distribution as you're riding, not you doing it, it's horrid. It's just, you can't trust yourself. Pretty soon you're trying to not only gauge what the bike's gonna do, but then what actually is coming at you also. So now you've got a whole nother deal that you're dealing with.
Like, so I live in Minnesota, so we deal with various road conditions, to say the least, in the spring and the fall.
Oofta.
And a lot of sand and other shit. And so you get these bikes that got this traction control, these fucking stability deals going on them, and you're coming through, and here you go, you got sand and snow and everything else going on. Like, what the fuck? And so now you got a bike that's going to tell me how to ride, and it has no idea what we're even fucking riding on.
Nope. And then it's trying to adjust for what would be an ideal situation. I mean, granted, they're getting smarter, but I still don't want it.
Like I said, you definitely need a choice. It's the worst thing for a human is not to have a choice. That's dictatorship, basically. I mean, you want to have a choice, one or the other, off or on. And when you stop having choices, that's when it fucking gets bad in any field of life, basically.
One of my favorite bikes right now is a pure analog. It's just a supermoto. The last time I was in Thailand, I rode a YZF 450 supermoto through the, and it was fast. There was no nanny features to it. Every corner I could lean it over. If I wanted to break the rear end loose or skid around a corner, it was no problem. I started up and I didn't have to think about turning anything off.
My
You know,
we were
you just
talking about
start
it
it,
before-
twist the throttle.
we were talking about it before you came on. So my 15-year-old, I got him riding at 8 because he's my stepson. Well, now he blew up his 250 KTM dirt bike. Well, he's decided he wants to get a 450 Supermoto because that way in 2 years when he's old enough to ride on the road, he can take his Supermoto dirt bike from the farm and ride it on the road. I mean, he's just in love with it. So
Oh yeah.
we're in a big argument right now. I'm not ready to get him one because I'm not ready to have the police showing up at my house because this kid ain't old enough to be riding around in town picking his girlfriend up.
What part of
Yeah.
Minnesota do you live in?
Rochester, southeast.
All right, on.
Yeah,
Dan,
I was out there with some other guys, and the Supermoto killed it on the corners versus, you know, Z900s and everything else that were all nannied.
oh,
The
yeah.
bike only weighs 120 kg, and you can lean it over as far as you want.
Mhm.
Well, I inherently shut off all my, like when I get on my BMW GSA, I pretty much shut off the ABS and I shut off the traction control and I shut it all off. I have seen in some circumstances when I was stationed in Germany, you know, guys blowing into corners that maybe are riding above their ability or whatever. ABS is, you know, it works when it works if you trust it. You know, it thinks pretty good and so on and so forth. But, you know, I don't know, the new BMW's got some pretty cool stuff out. You know, I ride with a buddy that rides a Triumph Tiger, and every time we go on a gravel, he's like, hey, I got to stop and put it in off-road mode. I'm like, what? Stop and put it in off-road mode?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, where the BMW, you know, you can roll through and just scroll, boom, you're in off-road mode, you just keep rolling. There is some inherent, you know, I think what they're trying to do, to be honest with you, I don't think that they're building bikes for the 10% that really push the bike, really ride the bike, really know the bike, inherently understand, you know, the principles and so on and so forth. And I really think part of the issue is the reason why they're putting all these safety features in on some of these bikes is, I mean, I can't tell you, when we had our dealership, I mean, people come in, they think they know everything, you know, they buy a bike that's way above their ability. You know, I mean, I watched a lady buy a brand new Triumph Tiger from our dealership, and we were like, hey, you know, the tires are slick, they're brand new, they got, you know, casement on them and so on and so forth. She's like, oh, I know what I'm doing, blah blah blah. She literally got on the street, wicked on the throttle, the bike went about 4 foot, spun a circle, laid it on the ground, and that was as far as she made it. And I was like, well, I guess we're rebuilding your brand new bike now, you know. So inherently, I think they're building this stuff for to cover their ass, essentially, right? Because people are buying shit that's way over their head, and you know, and it's the age old adage, you know. I mean, I ride in the woods a lot. I don't know if you guys just saw that bike that I showed you a picture of. I'm a 270-pound dude, and I ride a 300 2-stroke with a carburetor. And people give me shit all day long because they ride their 450s. We get out in the woods and the really tight stuff, and I just put them to bed because it's way too much bike for tight technical stuff. You know, you're trying to hang on to a 55 horsepower monster that literally just wants to rip itself out from underneath you on trails where you're in first and second gear and clutching all the time. And I'm like, hey, in the desert, you're going to own me. You know, on the wide open stuff, you're going to own me. But in the tight technical stuff, I'm telling you, that bike is going to freaking work you to death. And, you know, there's a lot of these new bikes that are coming out, you know, with map switches and so on and so forth. And, you know, it's that old saying, right? Like, I don't care if you're building 1,000 horsepower. If you can't get it to the ground and can't control it, it doesn't matter if you got 10 horsepower or 10,000 horsepower. You got to be able to use what you got, you know. And I think they're inherently building these bikes for, you know, say for instance, Harley Davidson's building these bikes for their aged out freaking rider. I mean, their average rider of a Harley's 60 plus years old. So they're building in all these safety features so these old fuckers can ride these 130 horsepower monsters, you know? And then guys like you and I that really want to just get out there and feel the bike for what it is are literally taking 5 minutes to scroll through all the safety features to shut everything off so I can actually like ride raw bike, you know?
Well, like, so I was telling these guys, that's what I did. I took one of those monsters out of these fucking new bikes. I took a 131 and I put it in a 2000 Dyna. Then I pulled everything out of it but the motor and the tranny and put her back to carburation. That fucker stands up in fifth gear. And
Right.
people are like, oh, let me ride it. Let me ride it. Let me ride it. No, you'll destroy it. Like you have no
well,
idea.
or it'll destroy you, one of the two.
Right.
So,
You're talking you're talking about a 500-pound motorcycle that has a motor that's built for a 1,200-pound motorcycle. And unless you've been on it and you know what you're talking about, I don't feel like losing that money.
well, then the problem
Yeah.
is too, now you've got it on an old Dyna, right? So you've got this monster underneath you, and now you've got brakes that are antiquated and are good for an 88 cubic inch. So now you're like, well, now I got to upgrade the brakes. And then once you upgrade the brakes, you're like, well, now I need better suspension because the damn thing's pushing through the corners so hard that the ass end either wants to swap ends on me. So I mean, you know,
we did all that. We
oh
did
yeah,
all that, but it doesn't have front brakes. I didn't put front brakes back on it.
oh, geez, you
But-
fucking monster, you.
Well, I mean, I grew
your
up.
wife, your wife must have good insurance on you.
No, I don't have a wife. I'm a single dad.
Even
boy.
worse.
So, but I grew up riding suicide clutch, jockey shift panheads and shit. And I mean, I know what it is, so I'm gonna put front brakes on it here, but I just haven't got to it yet.
Oh, I hear you, man. So, you know, I think inherently the problem is, you know, you guys, I don't know if you follow the adventure segment or not, but I mean, they attest to 2/3 of the market value right now is adventure bikes,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so these guys, you know, they get on YouTube, they watch a few things and they're like, I want to do that. Well, inherently, you know, they don't really realize they've got, you know, a 500-600-pound bike underneath them. They're out there riding these trails with hard panniers. And I'm like, why are you riding hard panniers? Well, that's what it came with. I'm like, well, don't stick your leg down because that bike falls over. We're going to have to freaking airlift you out of here because you're going to snap your goddamn leg off.
Yep.
You know, I think it's just that, you know, my buddy says it best. And I love it every time. He's like, those who don't know that they don't know.
Yep.
And inherently it causes all of us guys that really know the platforms and whatnot to really have to rethink things. You know, like this beta I have in here, the reason why I went with a beta is because it's got a counterbalance 2-stroke motor, but it's rated. So I wanted the most technically advanced bike I could find with oil injection and all the stuff so I don't have to worry about, but I didn't want to have to worry about, you know, oh shit, I need to take it to the shop to plug it in to see what the freaking engine code is. You know what I mean? This thing is just pretty much just plain old simple 2-stroke bike. And, you know, but it's got all the, you know, all the stuff that you would want to do to make it even better, right? Like counterbalance, just like that. But yet it's like, oh, it's running a little fat. Just let me raise the clip and drop the needle or vice versa, you know, and or rejet it right there on the trail. It takes 5-10 minutes and you're back on the trail running a hot bike again. And, you know, I will say that, you know, a lot of these TPI bikes and stuff that are coming out, they're pretty, I mean, they're pretty good, right? I mean, 95% of the time they're really good, but you know, they just inherently, I live 200 miles to the nearest major city. So like I've got a recall on my BMW right now and my wife's got a recall on her BMW. I have to take it 225 miles away to the nearest shop and figure out how long it's going to be there and how I got to get back and forth. And so it's
Where do
like,
you live?
I live in the very northeast corner of Oregon.
Sweet.
And so there's nothing out here but, well, I mean, I'll show you guys here.
Well, I'm a
I
trucker.
mean, I'm at
so-
3,500 feet. That mountain's 7,500 feet right behind me. And then, so from my house, if you're a truck driver, if you come to LeGrand and you pass within 15 miles of my house. So I've got 5 mountain ranges within 20 minutes of me. I can be on 5 different mountains in 20 minutes
So
from
I haul heavy equipment.
5,000 feet to
I
11,500.
haul heavy equipment over the road. So I actually like Washington, Oregon. I love that area. I've been up in there.
I live in the very northeast corner, so it's all mountains, and it's loggers, ranchers, and farmers, and handshake deals go everywhere still. So, you know, I get on these forums and stuff like, hey,
Yeah.
what do you do when you have your camper off your pickup for, you know, and how do you keep it from you know, getting stolen and all that stuff? And I'm like, well, everything in this driveway has its keys in it, and it's
Yeah.
all unlocked. And you know, if you want to come take it, I guess go ahead and try. But you know, we just don't worry about things like that, you know. And so I get
So-
kind of spoiled.
So I've been riding a long time. I've never even heard about these betas. And my kid started talking to me about 3 months ago about getting one for I got him into motocross a couple of years ago. And he's talking about these betas. And so I've never even heard of them. I don't know a lot
That's
about
also
it.
something I'm interested in. Dan, if you could, what's
So-
what's
so-
the beta's all about?
Beta's been around since 1904. Okay?
Yeah,
They've been around a long
time.
time. So Beta is a very small Italian manufacturer that is almost on the lines of like Sherco. They're not a mass produced bike if in the essence of mass producing, right? So
Mhm.
every Beta comes with, even their race bikes come with a 6-month warranty. Their dual sport bikes come with a 1-year warranty. They come with a Trail Tech Voyager and a fan and all the stuff on them. Every single Beta that you buy, even their race bike, like this 300 two-stroke out here, is completely road legal. It comes with the blinker switch, the high and low beam, the whole 9 yards from the factory, the whole 9 yards. I mean, mine got damaged in shipping. They didn't know how bad it was damaged. When they got it in, it had tipped over in the crate and they thought it had bent the radiator. And so, you know, they ordered me a new radiator. It was no big deal, right? And I rode the bike probably about 10 hours and I was like, you know, every once in a while some bitch pops out of first gear and I couldn't quite figure it out. So I took it to my local dealer here and he's like, you know,
So
Beta said that,
So there's
What's that?
there's actually a dealer for beta over there.
yeah, a very, very small dealer. He's just a little mom and pop shop. And, you know, the Beta dealer came by and talked to him. And I'm like, dude, if you don't jump on this, you're missing a giant freaking bandwagon right now. Cause Beta's here. I mean, they're picking up market share like crazy right now. So anyways, this bike wouldn't stay in first gear every once in a while. You know, you'd put it in first gear and it'd whack and it would move and then you'd let out the clutch and it wouldn't be in first gear. You'd be in first gear rolling along, you'd let off the throttle and get back on the throttle and it wouldn't be in first gear. So long story short is when the bike tipped over in the crate, it must have been resting on something and bent the shift fork just a little bit. And it, you know, it was just on the star, you know, when you shift in the transmission, you get the star shifter in there where it drops over the teeth.
Yeah.
Every once in a while it would go all the way in, every once in a while it wouldn't. No shit, guys. No complaints, no nothing. Beta said, you know what? We're going to send you a brand new bike. No questions asked. That's our problem. We shouldn't put it on the customer. Not only they send me a brand new bike, but they sent me the brand new bike with an extra set of plastics and graphics to turn it into the race edition. So, I mean, I've got no complaints. Plus the bike costs like a brand new Beta 480 RRS or the 500 RRS road bike, you know, which is going to compete with the KTM 500s and the Husqvarna 501s, is like $10,300, and it's completely uncorked from the box. So like the Beta 390 puts out 44 horse stock, and the KTM 500 puts out 44 horse stock, and then you got to buy $1,000 ECU. You got to put a different cap on it. You got to do this, that, and the other because they're a big enough company now. They have to meet all this EPA compliance where Beta is still small enough where they still fly under the radar, and they're bringing you these bikes that are essentially just dirt bikes with blinkers on them and they're throwing them on the street. The 500 has 62 horsepower. It weighs
So-
216 pounds.
What would your recommendation be for a 15-year-old kid that wants to run at motocross?
Well, they build a Beta 350 4-stroke. I'm a 2-stroke guy. They build a 250 2-stroke. They build a 300 2-stroke. They build a 125
I've
2-stroke.
had the
They're all great bikes. I'm a woods guy, so I want that linear, smooth, long stroke, just grunt horsepower motor. So I'm going to buy a two-stroke 300, or I'm going to buy a Beta 390, which is the 390 is a long stroke motor. It shares the same stroke with the 480, so it's just super linear horsepower. And from 18 on, they've used a double injector, so it has a low side injector and a high side injector, so it doesn't have that power hit.
Yep.
You know, so we have to understand that two things kill something faster than anything, you know, heat and vibration, right? So
Yep.
if you can keep the heat down, the vibration down, you've got a bike that'll last a long, long time. I've got guys that have got 600 hours on a two-stroke Beta, and the thing still is on its same top end. I mean, they just run and run and run and run.
Well,
And so
my biggest argument is you got a kid that's 15 years old. He's been riding for 7 years and he only weighs 120 pounds, maybe. And he wants, you know, he keeps trying to talk me to these massive bikes. And I'm like, no, for one, you're no way. You can kill yourself out there.
The difference is I can tell you right now, just like MotoGP, you watch the 250s, the old 252 strokes, and the small 500s are turning faster lap times than the 1000 cc's. 1 pound of rotating mass is equal to 7 pounds of static weight. So you either got to have the muscle to throw it where you want it, or you got to have the rotational mass light enough that if you're smaller, you know, he's going to be faster on a 250 all day long than a 450, because all he's going to be doing on a 450 is hanging on for dear fucking life. And a 250, he's actually going to be able to ride the bike to its potential, you know, where
he's been riding 170 class 175, and all of a sudden he wanted to jump up to a KTM or one of these Beta 450s, and I'm like, no way. I don't even know.
The problem
is
if
he could hold on to it going down the fucking gravel road through the field.
Well, the problem is he's going to be able to ride it, but he's not going to be able to ride it nowhere near its potential. So he's actually going to slow himself down drastically, because the bike is going to be manhandling him, and he is essentially going to be he's always going to be behind a curve. You know, where on a 250, he's going to be able to be in tack position. The bike's going to come on. He's still going to be in attack position because the bike's going to pull, but not pull so hard that it pulls him out of attack position. I had a Beta 480. I weigh 270 pounds. I could ride it just fine. But at the end of the day, I was like, I'm tired of hanging on to this freaking monster. You know, it literally was like, it was a point and shoot machine. I mean, when it caught traction, I mean, it might go left, it might go right. I mean, it was going whether you were ready or not. This 300, I mean, when you open up two-stroke, of course, when you open it up, it pulls hard. Yep. But 95% of the time, it literally feels like a mountain bicycle with a freaking motor. I mean, I'm like, oh, rock. Oh, wow, I just changed course. I mean, it weighs 206 pounds. It's super easy to maneuver. I mean, I ride with the guys and they're like, dude, you never even stand up. You sit down and make magic happen. I'm like, well, hey, it's the bike. It's not me. Let me tell you. So, you know, I mean, that's the problem. Is the reason why he wants 450 is because probably inherently one of his buddies or two of his buddies got 450s, and that's what he wants.
Well, he's 15 and his testosterone's starting to grow. He thinks he's a man.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I get it. You know, we've all been there, the bigger, better, faster thing. And in reality, when we get done building these monsters that we like to build, we realize, well, that's not even fun anymore, because now it's just freaking work.
Yeah.
You know, it's like these new snowmobiles.
To build it. I built mine just to build it. I ride it a little bit, but I ride it something else. I ride the one I got that I ride every day. It's got a 96 cc in it, or a 96 cubic inch. And I mean, I enjoy it. It keeps up with the 103s and the 113s just fine.
Because it's riding.
Yeah, one of my favorite bikes to ride around here is, I mean, I have a lot of bikes, but I have a little 200 scrambler that I use for my little adventure rides. I mean, granted, I'm in Asia, but you know what? It goes everywhere, and it's quiet enough to sneak around.
Well, I hate riding something that at the end of the day, your forearms and your shoulders and your groin fucking kills you at the end of the day.
Oh yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, take a framer, for instance. There's guys that swing 20-ounce framing ounce hammers, and there's guys that swing 13, 14-ounce hammers. I mean, it just depends on your build and your chemical makeup and what you're able to handle and sustainability and so on and so forth. I would rather be on a smaller bike that I feel like I'm working to its full potential, rather than being on a bigger bike and I'm always wondering, is a son of a bitch going to stay this way or that way? Or, you know, I mean, for me, it's, you know, these, I mean, there's new snowmobiles that are coming out with 245 horsepower. It's a point and shoot machine. You know, the problem is they put average guys in places they have no place being, and then they go, well, how do I get down? You know, so,
Yeah.
you know, just because they build it doesn't mean that it's a viable option. I mean, if you could go out like on a beta test days, for instance, right? So they have these, they all these motorcycle companies generally now have what they call test days, where you go out and you get a ride like a 2-mile closed course or whatever. You know, tell him to hop on a 250 or a 300 and ring it out and clock him on his lap time, and then let him get on the 450 480 like he really wants, then clock him and say, dude, you're 25 seconds slower. I'm plain and simple. You have too big of a bike, you can't handle it. You're actually slower than you would be, so you wouldn't even be able to compete at this point. You know, you think you're a great rider, but in reality, if you're riding the right tool for the job, hey, you got her done.
If you explain all of that to your son, I think he's gonna make the right choice.
Well, just tell him to watch MotoGP.
We always hope.
Those little 250s and 500s are turning way faster lap times. You know, it's
They-
fun to squeeze the trigger on 200 plus horsepower, but
Tell him, so why do you want to be slower? You know, tell him why you want to be slower.
right.
Who's got the bigger
Yeah.
balls at that age?
I had a 250 Beta 4-stroke. I love that damn bike. That thing was quick, light.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah,
you guys are
for sure.
You guys are talking me into getting a beta now. Oh, I've never even
Hey,
thought of
Check-
that.
Check
that
this
bike
thing
was
out,
badass.
man.
It
Look at
is a
this bike.
beautiful bike. Yeah.
I mean, it's got open cartridge front suspension, you know, it's perfect for the woods. It's got linkage rear suspension, which is, you know, the only reason why I would ever switch to a KTM would be for an XCW for PDS rear suspension, just give me more ground clearance, not for the type of riding I do. But, you know, I'm telling you guys, I mean, there's a perfect tool for every job. You don't, when you need a hammer, you don't go to your toolbox and grab a crescent wrench, for fuck's sakes. You get a damn hammer. You know, I mean, and the older we get, the more we realize, like, hey, you know, I can still drive that square peg in a round hole. I'm just not willing to wear it out so it comes back out anymore. You know, so
Call around, see if there's a dealership. You know, if there is a dealership, if they can get parts for it, then why not? Yeah.
oh, you can get, and that's the big thing is everybody's like, oh, well, you know, the reason why I ride a KTM Husqvarna is because you can get parts for it. Well, Jesus Christ, come on. This is 2021. You can buy parts for anything anymore. They
If you got
import them.
internet, you can get it.
Yeah. And they internet them
Oh,
in, they sell these bikes, they import them in through California. That's where they come in from.
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, I've never had an issue with getting any parts. I mean, this bike here has seat concept seat on it, giant loop
ordered
bags.
Just order the seat concept seats, man. They have a 8 to 10 week lead time right now. It's nuts.
Well, that's what they're saying, but it'll get there way faster. So this one's got a P-Tech engine guard on it. It's got, you know, front disc brake guard. It's got a rear disc brake guard and, you know, master cylinder protection. I've got side case guards. I've got an IMS 3.5 gallon tank on it. I've got a Voyager Trail Tech Pro on it. I mean,
awesome. Yeah.
I mean, it's an absolute woods weapon. I mean, I'm averaging right now anywhere between 17 and 21 miles an hour in the woods, and that is flat flying.
That's
I mean,
flying,
this
yeah.
thing is so easy to ride.
Is that thing an enduro? Does it have lights, or is that just a straight dirt bike?
No, it has lights and everything. So, like I said, this bike, this is their race model. And like I was telling you, Beta comes from the factory with everything you need to make it street legal. Right
Okay.
there. There's a high beam, low beam, left blinker, right blinker, horn, bump to pass, the whole 9 yards. You got a bump to pass up here. Everything's on it from the factory. And this right here is a map switch. So it
Mhm,
retards the timing 6 degrees when you hit that button, and it turns it into rain mode.
mhm.
And the thing just gets traction to the ground like crazy. I'm running tubeless in it. So I'm running like 4 to 6 pounds in the rear tire and 6 to 8 in the front. And I'm running Shinko 216 gummies. Check this out. You can take these tubes. I mean, they're just super, super soft. The thing just grips. I just got back from Moab last week. And man, I'm telling you, this thing was gripping on the freaking rocks and climbing up shit. And I was doing shit I probably should not have been doing, but man, it was a blast to be doing. So, perfect tool for the job. I was riding with a 2020 KTM 300 XCW 6 days edition with TPI, and his didn't run any better than mine did at 7,600 feet. And he's got, the top of the line fuel injection, the whole 9 yards, right? So I'm a carburetor guy. It's simple. It's easy. I mean,
That's
I can
me.
make adjustments.
Yeah.
I
I'm
mean,
carburetor all the way. All the way.
My Beamers are fuel injected and they run good. Like I said, I think there's a perfect tool for every job. The new KTM 1290 Super Adventure is 160 horsepower until you put it in dirt mode, and then it retards the timing and whatnot down to 100 horsepower. I mean, it's pretty amazing with some of the electronics, but it's all fly by wire, right? So it's all ohms worth of resistance. So you might have 12 volts someplace, but it's running a CAN bus system and running, 3 ohms to the throttle. And if your throttle goes dead, you're done. Well, my Beamer still got a cable on it. Worst case scenario, I reach down to a pair of vice grips, lock it on there, and I can still pull the freaking clutch cable or the throttle cable and get home,
Mhm.
So there's a lot of that stuff that's, I think, is inherently awesome if, you live close to a major dealership and, parts are easy and so on and so forth. But when you look at the bigger picture, especially like in Asia and whatnot, I mean, you're not overnighting parts. You're taking whatever the hell you can get your hands on and trying to make it work. And so you better be on something that is around, So
The number one bike really over here is you go with a Honda, especially if you're going to tour Vietnam. Honda, there's dealerships.
right.
I mean, you could go get a KTM. Yeah, of course. You can get a Ducati. There's one dealer in the whole country.
Yeah, and if you need parts, I mean, I don't know if you guys have followed Tim Burke. He traveled around the world for 3 years on a BMW, and he was down in South America and needed a clutch, and it took him like 6 weeks to get a clutch, and the tariff on the clutch was like $700 fucking dollars just to ship the bitch in the country. And he's like, holy crap, and I'm like, well, when in Rome, you get stuck with some of that stuff. So, you kind of got to understand where you live, where you operate out of, what your AO is going to be, and so on and so forth. And then you buy the best product that you can buy with the best dealer support that you can buy from. I mean, I got a bunch of buddies that ride KTMs. They're fine bikes.
I have a Ducati over here, and the last time I needed to get a new O2 sensor.
Yeah, good luck.
I shipped it from Seattle. I had my brother go down, buy it, and then ship it to me, which was like $900 for the 2 O2 sensors and another $300 for shipping.
You see what I'm saying? I mean, where you could buy you could buy a whole nother little Honda on the side of the road from somebody for less money than that and ride the damn thing, So I mean, you just got to inherently understand what your area operation is and where you're going to be taken care of, because you will have problems eventually. And the last thing you want to deal with is a dealer that doesn't want to take care of you or parts availability. I mean, and that's like, well, shit, I got this freaking really badass bike that, well, I can't ride. And that just frustrates a guy, right?
The other problem is when you start going, right? You're on a ride. There's no tow trucks to get you.
No.
So you better be able to fix the damn thing.
Yep. And that's why inherently sometimes I stay away from this newer fly-by-wire stuff, even though it's got all the ride control stuff, and it's amazing. Don't get me wrong. But if you're a freeway rider and you're bouncing from bar to bar, that's a great bike for you to have. But if you're a guy that likes to tinker, wants to work on your own stuff, make a few modifications, so on and so forth, and just make the bike really emulate your personality, well, every time you do something to it, you got to send the ECM in and have it either unlocked or have somebody retune it, or this, that, or the other. And it gets to the point where it becomes more of a problem than it does anything else. And so I think inherently some of this stuff that's being built is being built for that 80% who is just literally, I mean, there's a reason why Harley has what's called Harley Owners Group. I mean, if I had $1 for every time I heard a guy say, man, I picked up a 3 or 4-year-old Harley Davidson with like 20 grand worth of shit on it with like 1,200 miles on it for a really good deal, I'd be a rich man. I mean, you want to buy a bike that guys ride, go buy a Goldwing. I mean, they ride and ride and ride and ride, you know, or BMW GS. I mean, I know many of them that have well over 100,000 miles on them, and guys ride them, you know. So, you know, it's for me, it's about parts availability, being able to work on the thing inherently on the side of the road if I need to, and just, you know, being able to get out and enjoy the bike. That's why we all
Yeah.
buy them.
Hopefully the bike manufacturers see this this video so they can. I'm gonna try to get it out. to
Start
them.
building some simple shit.
Yeah. So,
Well, and if you stay with the small companies, they're still building simple stuff because they don't have to meet all this giant EPA compliance. I don't know if you guys have watched the new law in California, 2022. There will be 0 green sticker 2-strokes allowed in California ever. So this 300 that I have right here is going this way because everybody wants a 2020 or 2021 because 2022 is no longer a green sticker bike. And that's gonna suck because California makes up like 2/3 of the biking community in the United States because of its size and the riding area and so on and so forth. And they're really clamping down really hard, and it's gonna throw a giant wrench in things, you know.
Like I said, I will avoid riding through California as much as I possibly can.
mhm.
Yeah, I'll go 400 miles around. And you know, the sad thing is California's got some fucking phenomenal riding, but Jesus Christ, the laws are freaking ridiculous. You know, you're like, God, you know, I thought this was America, a free country, not like, you know, it's just so frustrating, you know, because I've got buddies that ride down there and they're literally like going back to old stuff because the compliance and the new stuff, they can't do anything to the bike to make it even remotely like personality wise what they want to do. It's they can't do anything to the bikes. They got to pretty much ride it in stock form.
Well, no, they can, and we do, but you know.
Well, the biggest problem I have now is like with all the bikes I own in the States, they're too loud for the decibel readers in California. It doesn't matter what age the bike is. If you have an older bike, you still got to be inside the decibel setup, and you can't over a certain period. You still need their stock exhaust, or you know, at least look like you have stock exhaust on. You know, or you are able to get a ticket there. I mean, they find it, right? So, yeah, it drives me crazy.
It gets old after a while, you know. I mean, you know, because inherently you want to be able to recreate and do the things within a reasonable, without suspicion, right? But at the same time, I mean, you know, I remember one of the days everybody's like, oh God, the 2-strokes, they're so loud, they're so loud. So then they got 4-strokes. Well, 4-strokes are loud from 10 feet or 10 miles. They're still just as loud. 2-stroke gets like 200 yards away from you. It's no longer loud. I mean, you know, it just, you know, you sometimes you just try to wrap your head around what the hell they're thinking. And you're like, the hell are they thinking? You know,
if you see in the background, there's this KTM Duke 1290 right there on my picture. So I rode with a guy yesterday, and you know, he's a California rider, crazy fast rider. I mean, he was gone, and his license plate is mounted in such a way where you can't see it. And I'm like, so why do you? That's interesting. Why do you have your license plate? So the cops don't give me tickets. You know, he mounted so they can't see his license plate.
Right. Exactly. Well, you know, hey, you know, you got to do what a guy's got to do, right? You know,
I mean, that bike
so like
is a rocket, man. They're not catching him, and the way he's a really good rider. I haven't seen a rider that fast around corners. He's maybe a little crazy, but
I think we're all inherently just a little crazy, you know. Hey, I mean, he's over in Asia. I mean, he's seeing guys, 4 guys to a bike wearing shorts with freaking tank top, no helmet, and a pair of fucking flip flops. All right, now that shit's crazy.
Whole family on a freaking bike.
That's what I'm saying.
he probably
5 people and the babies on the handlebars.
no, that guy probably thought I was crazy because that's how I was riding. I came with no gear. He was fully suited up, you know, going really quick. I came with no gear, trying to keep up with him.
That's how I learned riding.
on my dirt bike tires.
So, you know, I mean, I guess where I'm at, you know, I live in the northeast corner here. So for me to get to like Boise, Idaho is 230 miles. To Tri-Cities, Washington is 220 miles. I mean, so we're kind of inherently out on our own out here. which I absolutely love. Like I said, I can.
Dan, if it's okay with you, I'm really gonna try to get out there and ride out there, learn from you, because I'm new to adventure riding. You know, I've been a street rider these whole years.
Well, I bring people. So like in this organization I run, Veterans Back 40, there's guys that come over from like the Portland area, and we go for rides, and they're like, dude, we've been riding for 2.5 hours. We haven't passed another car.
Yeah.
This is fucking crazy. I'm like, this is normal, you know? So, you know, you better be able to have something that works and whatnot. And you better like being remote. I mean, because when you're out, I mean, 90% of the time my cell phone doesn't work. And that's why I ride here. That's why I live here. I mean, is just the solitude.
There's this guy here, Joe is called Joe. He builds the Joe Hauler racks. I got one of those. And I'm wondering if I can transport my KTM around with that. It is a heavier bike, but that thing is solid. That Joe Hauler thing is solid.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I can throw that on there and go wherever.
I mean, so this view right here is
right.
west.
What's
I mean,
that
that's looking west right there, and
Just
it's just
ride.
nothing but mountains. Yeah, exactly. Just ride the damn thing. That's why you bought an adventure bike. Come on.
Wait, let me see.
You bought an 890
What's
to
your
take
zip
you go
code?
across the country.
What's your zip code then?
97824.
I've ridden my DR the whole from top to bottom of the states. My DR 650. You could ride your 890 twin.
For sure. That 890 is a pretty sweet machine for a KTM.
Yeah.
Kmart trail machine, that's what we call them out here. Or keep taking my money.
You're about, you're about,
Keep taking
about,
That's funny.
you're about 1,000 miles from me. That's not bad, huh?
No,
That's
it's
a
all
short-
mountains. It's all mountains. You know, I live in a town of 512 people. We don't have a stoplight. You know, we go to these little mom and pop burger joints out in the middle of nowhere, you know, where like I can take you down to this little store called Imnaha store. It's down on the Imnaha River right next to the Hells Canyon. And it's a bar / store, and the bar is literally where you sit at the bar and they serve you whatever. And literally the store and restaurant is like in the same room. You just sit at tables, and they have a pool table down there, and there's nothing else for these kids to do. And they will swindle you out of every fucking dollar you have playing pool because they're good at it. But
they pretend like they're bad at first, like, right? They're not making the balls, and then you're like,
oh yeah, for sure. I watched a kid 2 weekends ago. I was down there. I watched a kid sink the 8 ball on a freaking break. There's no winning at that point. He just beats you right there. Done. Over. One strike of the cue and he's done. I mean, so you know, it's very remote out here. Big mountains, lots of back roads. I mean, I ride secondary roads. We can ride from my house between 150 and 300 miles every single day for 5 days, never cross the same road twice. I mean, that's just how big it is out here. I mean, it's the adventure mecca because, you know, you get over towards Bend. There's too many people.
It'll be a good test for the KTM 890. See if it'll survive.
Oh, it'll survive. It'll survive. We'll make it work. So, but no, I mean, I guess you know, like if you lived in California and so on and so forth, and you wanted all the rider features and all that stuff, that's great. But half the people don't know how to use them. They inherently cause issues. You know, there's too many sensors. There's too much stuff going on. If you know, that's what cracks me up about these adventure bikes. Right? They've got all this crazy stuff, and then we ride them in the dirt all the time. And then people go, why doesn't my TFT screen work? Or why is this stupid sensor not working right? And it's like, well, you know, so just give me the older stuff that just tried and true and it works. And I'm good with it.
Yep.
I'll make do. You know, I mean, maybe I'm not as fast. Maybe I don't have all the fandangled stuff, but you know what? My bike goes, it rides, and it always comes home. That to me is pretty nice.
Definitely gonna try to spread this video to manufacturers. Hopefully they see it. You guys also, I'm gonna send it over to them if you have contacts with the manufacturers. You know, they gotta see, you know, what bikers are talking about. So
for sure.
I don't know any other way.
Depends on if
how
they're
they
selling
can-
it in the
Just the
Europe.
basics. engine, wheels.
Euro 5 kind of
handlebars.
screws all that stuff up.
Yeah, you guys got to give us an option. I'm speaking directly to the manufacturers. Give us an option. Okay,
Yeah,
this
right,
bike,
for
this
sure.
bike, on, off. Well, thank you guys very much again for joining. I learn every time from you guys. I really appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see some of you next time or the time after that. Bye bye, guys. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
All right.